the Miami Heat have taken a commanding 2-0 series lead over the Philadelphia 76ers, as they have honestly been the only team that have cruised their way through the playoffs up until this point, being the fact that they're undefeated this postseason at home. But it doesn't look like this success is going away anytime soon. The status of Embiid still remains uncertain on if he's going to be playing in Game 3, but honestly, it's not really looking like he's gonna suit up for Game 3, because apparently he had a hard time even just using his phone the other day because his head was just way too sensitive to the light. But even if he does return, he definitely won't be at his 100% because of this. He most certainly will have to wear a mask, and I honestly think that even if Embiid plays, Miami is still going to win this series because Philadelphia would have to win 4 out of their next 5 games, where one of which would have to come in Miami, which will be an extremely tough task to do because Miami has a 29-12 record when playing at home this season. Everything about this team, from the top of their lineup all the way down to their bench, is incredible, as they have stars in almost every single aspect of their roster, and in particular, it is their bench that shines in my eyes, being the fact that they have 2 incredible players coming off the bench for them in Oladipo and the 6th man of the year, Tyler Hero. And on top of that, they've even been without Kyle Lowry and Duncan Robinson, which only extends the depth on this team. Duncan Robinson's case is obviously a lot different from Lowry's, being that he isn't injured. He just really isn't playing that consistent right now, so it has been mostly coach's decision for why he's not in the lineup. But when Lowry does come back, it only is going to extend this bench even further, as he would replace Gabe Vincent in the starting lineup. And if Duncan Robinson starts to come back to the form that we saw him in Game 1, this leaves the Miami Heat to play around with 2 extremely lethal shooters in Max Strus and Duncan Robinson, who have the capability to come into games or even start depending on where they are in the lineup. But they have the capability to do what Duncan Robinson did in Game 1, and obviously not to that extent, as that was extremely impressive, the fact that he went 8 for 9 from the 3-point line. But anything along those lines of coming into the game and hitting 2 to 3 or even 4 threes for this team, just to add on to the scoring depth that this team has. Also, only a small percentage of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed, so if you end up liking this video, consider subscribing. It's free and it helps me out a ton. But starting off with the duo of Tyler Hero and Victor Oladipo off the bench, these 2 guys alone have to be one of the main reasons as to why this bench unit should be considered one of, if not the best in the NBA, as on top of the fact that Hero was the 6th man of the year this season, as he's shown his sustained success all year long in that role coming off the bench. But both of these guys can come into the game and give you at least 20 points per game on any given night, and they have both shown that it can be a lot more than that. But if your starters aren't playing well, you have 2 extremely viable options for you, and even if your starters are playing well, obviously you don't need to put them in as often as you would if they weren't. But this just makes that team that much scarier because everything is so unpredictable of who they're going to play on every given night, how much they're going to play, and honestly who is going to beat you, because they have multiple options that can come into the game, or who even have been starting the entire game, who can explode on any given night to give you a ton of buckets. But obviously, aside from the bench unit, this team also does have an extremely talented starting lineup as well, as Bam Adebayo has been taking advantage of Joel Embiid being out, and that is extremely unfortunate, as even Jimmy Butler stated himself that he wants to play against Joel Embiid, as he personally thinks that he is the MVP, and he wants the 76ers to be at their 100% so they can compete against each other. But Bam in this series has averaged 23 and 10, shooting 71.4% from the field, and what's incredible is that he's a plus 41 when he's on the floor this series, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that in Game 1 they heavily played DeAndre Jordan, where a lot of people do believe that that was a mistake, and it clearly showed that he simply just isn't as good as he used to be, and the Miami Heat are doing an excellent job at exposing that. But alongside him, they have Jimmy Butler as well, who has been amazing this playoffs, who had another strong effort last night, and he definitely, you can tell that he believes that this team is good enough to compete for a championship, as he's averaged 27, 8, and 6, leading the league in steals per game this playoffs, as he's shooting above 50% from the field and nearly 40% from 3, taking 4 threes a game. And that stat right there is the thing that impresses me the most, as he's recently consistently not been a great 3-point shooter, So him shooting 40% from beyond the arc is just incredible, and it just adds another level to which Jimmy Butler can play at. But not just Jimmy Butler, him performing at the highest level takes this team to that next level, because obviously he is the superstar on this roster, and a lot of the success is going to have to rely on him in key games once they start facing tougher opponents in the next round. But nonetheless, these are significantly strong signs coming from your superstar on this team, and Miami is definitely hoping that this can continue. But moving on to this series as a whole, I think even if Embiid comes back, they are going to beat the 76ers in this series, as I think this team is just too good to lose 4 out of their next 5 games, especially with the way they've been even playing. And their first test in this playoffs is going to be in the next round against an extremely challenging opponent in either the Boston Celtics or the Milwaukee Bucks. And honestly, I've heard a lot of people talk about how they've had a really easy path up until this point in the playoffs, and I honestly, I don't understand why people talk like that, because they earned the #1 seed in the playoffs, and sometimes that does come with it. You play the 8th seed in the first round. You couldn't project this Joel Embiid injury, but that you can't really do anything about it if it happened. And I don't think you should complain about their path. Of course, they're gonna have to go up against strong teams in the playoffs. Hopefully there aren't any more injuries to go along with that, but they have earned the path that they've been given. And obviously, again, not in terms of Joel Embiid's injury, but they've earned going up against a weaker Atlanta Hawks team. And honestly, even at full strength, I think they are a much better team in almost every aspect other than the best player in the series if Joel Embiid was playing, as they have the experience. And moving on into that experience, it's not just long playoff experience. They have a lot of championship and finals experience because of that year that this team went to the finals in the bubble, and a decent amount of guys are still on this team. But on top of that, you even have Lowry, who they got for this specific reason, to make the playoffs and go on an extremely long run, as he obviously won the championship with the Raptors. And what he brings to the table on top of just his play is his championship level mindset. He was the vocal leader on that 2019 roster. I am from Toronto, so I do know a lot about that. His mindset defensively, the amount of charges that he took, just everything in being a leader. And you could tell that has definitely translated to this Miami Heat locker room, as this is one of, even if not the best chance that this team has had to win the championship and go to the finals since they had LeBron. And obviously, I know they went in the bubble, but they went up against an extremely strong Lakers team that year. And this year, they have the talent, they have the experience, like I just mentioned. They also have PJ Tucker, who literally won last year. And like Lowry, he does a lot of things on and off the floor that sort of separate them from the rest of the pack, being phenomenal players and just people in general, people that you want in your locker room who just have that grit and grind mentality. The only thing they want is to win a championship, and anything less than that is they deem it as unsuccessful. But because of that, that is what has taken this team so far. They have been dealing with injuries all year, and that is the main thing that I think will hold them back from winning a championship this year, because this is something that has been unfortunately familiar for this team all season. Hopefully they can stay healthy just for this playoffs in general. It's been so exciting so far, and I really want that to continue. That's going to be all for today's video. Comment down below who you think is going to be Miami's toughest opponent in the Eastern Conference, either Boston or Milwaukee. As for this video, I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you all have a great night.